and that, knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep. For now is our salvation nearer than when we believed.
Let me leave you with just a couple of other thoughts. There has been a lot of rumbling in the past few weeks that the Republican Party of now and the Republican Party of the future is not going to be a place that's welcoming to social conservatives. And really, from the bottom of my heart, I want to say that is not true. Social conservatives have a seat at this table, and they always will, so long as I have any influence in this party. And President Trump, I know, agrees.
When we look at the end, as it is told in the scriptures, we see how government, how religious entities are going to be playing an important role as we're nearing the end of this world's history.
The second run of Trump has re-energized the Christian right in a new or different way?
1,000%. My message to Christians, and it should be loud and clear now, is if you don't want to be in politics, that's fine, but politics wants to be involved in you.
We need to have Christ back in our country.
What does that look like to have Christ back in our country? What does that look like politically?
Just like Louisiana, put the Ten Commandments back in our classrooms.
I'm ready for them to make the Bible hate speech.
Yeah, you think people who vote on the left would make the Bible hate speech?
Definitely.
So if Trump has been divinely protected, does that mean that he has to listen to Congress or listen to man-made entities?
He has free will. He can listen to himself.
Even if it's against maybe, the will of the American people or the Supreme Court or Democrats? So whatever former President Trump says goes? Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
We see how they, this campaign, the Trump's campaign, how they ran with talking about immigration, religious freedom, how having the conservatives a place in this government, that they were not going to be forgotten. And we can see how all this is being accomplished. This administration is keeping their words. And this nation is marching towards the bringing back religion. We can see how a lot of people are speaking more about religious freedom, religious liberty, and even the Sunday law, the blue laws are being spoken of in this time.
To require retail stores to close between midnight and noon on Sundays. Lawmakers narrowly repealed that law in 2019, but one House bill looks to bring it back. Michael Anthony joins us live from the Capitol to tell us more. Michael?
Good evening, Monica. There are efforts to bring back the blue law. The House Industry, Business, and Labor Committee isn't supporting it, however. In a 10-4 vote, lawmakers voted to recommend not passing it on the House floor. They heard testimony from supporters saying it's beneficial for employees to have time to spend with families and attend religious gatherings. Those in opposition argue it dampens local economic growth.
I think we live in a culture that's so hyper-focused on capitalism, material wealth, and looking at things through purely an economic lens. And there are more important matters in life than just a balance sheet.
We hope that you see that this limits economic freedom, it limits consumer choice, it turns the clock back on North Dakota.
Specifically, this impacts retail stores like your Walmarts and Targets. Restaurants, gas stations, and tourist attractions are among those that would be unaffected. Now, the House is expected to vote on this tomorrow, but some sponsors did suggest that they may change some of the language and make it more clearer and digestible for the legislature in a hope that it could pass at a later date. We'll see how this goes later on tomorrow. At the Capitol, I'm Michael Anthony, reporting for your news leader.
You know, many are not too familiar with the position J.D. Vance, the view, the belief he has in regards to the role of the religion it should have in the government.
Vance has identified as post-liberal. What do post-liberals want? Depending on who's talking, a post-liberal regime change could involve encouraging childbearing, easing or removing church-state separation, banning pornography for adults and children alike, reimposing laws that limit business on the Sabbath.
And many people think that we are crazy, that those of us who speak about the Sunday law, the mark of the beast that will be imposed by this government, they say this is an impossibility, that this will never happen. But in fact, even in the Senate and many people that are in positions, that hold a position very important in government, are even asking and talking about Sunday laws.
All right. Do you know what a blue law is?
I'm sorry, Senator?
Do you know what a blue law is?
A blue law is...
Studied that in law school, I'm sure.
I believe a blue law, Senator, is having to do with selling alcohol on certain days.
Yeah, like usually on Sunday.
Like, yes, Senator.
Yeah. Does that violate the Establishment Clause? Does the blue law, let me be more precise, I'm sorry. Does the blue law violate the Establishment Clause?
Senator, I don't believe a blue law does violate the Establishment Clause.
Okay, why not?
Well, because, Senator...
If a legislature says you can't open and sell, let's say, food or anything on Sunday, not Thursday, not Saturday, Sunday, why doesn't that violate the Establishment Clause? Tell me why, just succinctly, like you were back in law school.
Okay.
Why a blue law violates or doesn't violate the Establishment Clause? It seems obvious.
Well, the issue is whether, in looking at the Establishment Clause, of whether the action of the state in saying that you can't be open on a Sunday would either interfere with the free exercise of the persons, or it would be the government establishing a religion.
Yeah, I understand the issue.
Okay. So
what's the answer?
So the answer is that I believe that there's case law on the fact that there can be blue laws that allow alcohol stores or places that sell alcohol to not be open on Sundays.
Many people who are involved in the Project 2025, in fact, are being lined up for this administration. They're holding a very important position in this administration.
President Trump set a record for executive orders signed on Inauguration Day. And 2 weeks into office, he hasn't stopped. It appears some of the ideas the president is implementing mirror Project 2025.
Plus, look at this. These three guys were all part of Project 2025's writers. He brought them into the administration, including Border Czar Tom Homan, FCC Chair Brendan Carr, and White House advisor, Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy Stephen Miller, who was once listed as a Project 2025 advisory board member.
How do we effectively, quote, rip out the disgusting leadership class?
I think that what Trump should do, like if I was giving him one piece of advice, fire every single mid-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state, replace them with our people. And when the courts, because you will get taken to court, and then when the courts stop you, stand before the country like Andrew Jackson did and say the Chief Justice has made his ruling, now let him enforce it.
This is the origins of the suspicion that state power is always bad, right? Mm-hmm. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, that's not an Aristotelian view.
Yeah.
You know, power can corrupt, but power can also be and ought to be exercised toward good ends. Mm-hmm. So it's a partial understanding.
Sure.
It's not untrue, but it's only partially true.
Yeah.
And that's why you want a statesman,
a
good statesman and not a tyrant. But to displace the statesman as the kind of central desideratum for a good political order, and to replace it with sort of technique or
management,
mechanisms. Right, mechanism I think is the right word, especially in the classical understanding. You get the right sort of constitutional arrangements, and you might need to tweak these over time, depending on what experience tells us. But once you get the right set of arrangements, then you don't need a statesman. In fact, as Madison famously says in the Federalist Papers, right, we can't rely on the existence of the Platonic philosopher, right? We have to kind of assume most of our political leaders are going to be mediocre and some are going to be genuinely bad. And nevertheless, if you have the system arranged in the right way, it's actually it'll function. You don't need great statesmen.
Yeah. Donald Trump is the most statesmanlike president in generations, and that's the subject of the riff.
From the earliest days of our republic, faith in God has always been the ultimate source of the strength that beats in the hearts of our nation. We have to bring religion back. We have to bring it back much stronger. It's one of the biggest problems that we've had over the last fairly long period of time. And I really believe you can't be happy without religion, without that belief. I really believe it. I just don't see how you can be. So let's bring religion back. Let's bring God back into our lives.
But when we started to see this government speak about religious freedom, religious liberty, bringing back the Bible, bringing back religion, they're speaking about the government doing this. And I think this should be left toward each individual for them to decide when do they want to worship, what day they want to worship. Everybody has the liberty of conscience, and that's what we should promote, because this nation fled Europe, and one of those reasons why they fled is for religious freedom, for them to worship as it dictates their conscience. And I think this should be still the foundation of this government. And when a government starts speaking about bringing back religion, we just need to look at history. When the Catholic Church search or look for the government to implement their religious views, religious persecution, and that is something that we should keep an eye on. The government should not be establishing anything to do with religion.
In order for the United States to form an image of the beast, the religious power must so control the civil government that the authority of the state will also be employed by the Church to accomplish her own ends. Whenever the Church has obtained secular power, she has employed it to punish dissent from her doctrines. Protestant churches that have followed in the steps of Rome by forming alliance with worldly powers have manifested a similar desire to restrict liberty of conscience.
To confront such weaponization and religious persecution, today I'm signing an executive order to make our Attorney General, who's a great person, she's going to be a great Attorney General, Pam Bondi, the head of a task force, brand new, to eradicate anti-Christian bias. About time, right? Anti-Christian bias. Yeah, you never heard of that one before, right? But it's about time, isn't it, though, really? So many times you hear, but you don't hear the anti-Christian bias. The mission of this task force will be to immediately halt all forms of anti-Christian targeting and discrimination within the federal government, including at the DOJ, which was absolutely terrible, the IRS, the FBI, terrible, and other agencies. In addition, the task force will work to fully prosecute anti-Christian violence and vandalism in our society and to move heaven and earth to defend the rights of Christians and religious believers nationwide. We've never had that before, but this is a very powerful document I'm signing. You got it now. First time you've had it. If we don't have religious liberty, then we don't have a free country. We probably don't even have a country. I will always protect religious liberty.
Trump's new task force drew criticism from Americans United for separation of church and state. Rather than protecting religious beliefs, this task force will misuse religious freedom to justify bigotry, discrimination, and the subversion of our civil rights laws, said Rachel Laser, the group's president and CEO.
So this is very alarming. When you're going to see a government have a task force that's going to look over this anti-Christians, what's the limit?
Nominalism. Of course, I think you'd have to point not only to Machiavelli in some respects, and especially what I was just describing, which is the effort to make Christianity tractable, which I think that's really, in a lot of ways, you can understand or politically tractable. You could understand liberalism as kind of broadly the effort to make Christianity politically tractable, either in its classical liberal tradition, which is to say it's a private thing, it's a realm of opinion, and everyone is entitled to their opinion as long as you don't try to impose your opinion on anyone else. So it takes what was once understood to be the very basis and essence of what the good, not just the good life, but the good soul was, the good afterlife was. It says, okay, that's like being a stamp collector or counting widgets or something. That there's really no fundamental difference between those things. So on the one hand, making Christianity tractable in the classical liberal tradition, or in the progressive liberal tradition, in a sense saying we can make Christianity tractable by making our politics into Christianity, by sort of folding Christianity into the kind of the object and aim of immanentizing the eschaton, of making salvation plausible through our political order. So I think it's that aspect of liberalism which arises especially and accelerates especially, of course, in the Reformation, post-Reformation period, which is how do you resolve the internal divisions within the church? Well, we resolve them initially. It's interesting, even Locke takes the Hobbesian route initially, which is to say we make it tractable by turning the kingdom into, turning religion into a civil religion, turning Christianity into a civil. So the king will articulate what the creed is. Right? So it's that image of the Leviathan who's holding the sword and the crozier, that the sovereign defines what the faith is. And that's the first sort of letter on toleration by John Locke is basically this kind of Hobbesian argument. But then he changes tact, but with in some ways the same effect, which is to say, well, we're not going to have the sovereign name or determine what the religion is. The sovereign will be indifferent, will merely be a referee, and people can believe what they want. The sovereign will simply say which religions are out of bounds. Right. So in a sense, he's not determining what the religion is. He's simply saying which religions or actions or beliefs are out of bounds. So it's defining the boundaries of what's permissible. Of course, that's continues to be a deep and profound ongoing set of debates and challenges, and the condition of what it is to live in the liberal democracy today. So debates over religious liberty are really kind of all about the question of what are the boundaries of religion.
Many who speak about the Saturday, the seventh day, being the true day of worship, the true Sabbath day, many are going to be offended. And they're going to say we're speaking against them, we're speaking against their belief, and we will be categorized as possible of being anti-Christian. And that is the danger of this administration establishing this task force, a faith-based task force in the White House, and having someone overseeing these things. And these are things that the Bible speaks about, this beast speaking like a dragon, enforcing laws that will violate religious freedom.
Sunday keeping is not yet the mark of the beast, and will not be until the decree goes forth causing men to worship this idol Sabbath. The time will come when this day will be the test, but that time has not come yet.
This country belongs to God Almighty.
A powerful minority is on the rise with a particular vision of America.
You cannot separate God from politics. You can't take him out of our government.
It's one of the oldest and most influential currents in U.S. politics. But in a country deeply divided, the Christian right has found a new voice.
We desire to live in a Judeo-Christian nation with Judeo-Christian values.
It claims Christianity is under attack and that God belongs in government.
We're going to protect Christianity, and I can say that. I don't have to be politically correct.
And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand, or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name.
So as we're seeing prophecy being unfold, as we see this government taking the steps to even to establish a faith-based office to see the religious freedom that the government is to see over, this is pointing towards the enacting of the Sunday law. And that is something that we need to see. It is a sign that is letting us know that we're near the end. But another thing that we cannot overlook is the condition of the church. The church is going to be tried. You will have false teachers, false doctrines trying to creep in to the church. You will see people come up with thoughts that the standards should not be important anymore. You ought to just allow them to be baptized even if they embrace error. All these things we need to be looking out after. These are also signs that the fall of Babylon is almost complete. It is spoken of that when the world it comes in, the fashions of the world introduced into the church, the doctrines, the practices are introduced into the church. This will lead to the completion of the fall of Babylon. So we cannot just see the signs of the Sunday law. We cannot see just this government speaking about religious freedom and trying to enact blue laws again. We need to also look after or look out for our brethren. Look out for the church, the dangers that is trying to come into the church, the false teachings. These are also pointing that we are coming to the end.
If you lower the standard in order to secure popularity and an increase of numbers, and then make this increase a cause of rejoicing, you show great blindness. If numbers were evidence of success, Satan might claim the preeminence. For in this world, his followers are largely in the majority. It is the degree of moral power pervading the college that is a test of its prosperity. It is the virtue, intelligence, and piety of the people composing our churches, not their numbers, that should be a source of joy and thankfulness.